Hi everyone, welcome to In the Pink Dog Grooming Salon. This is Lucy. She is a toy poodle cross Maltese. She has quite a challenging coat because rather than having picked up the poodle curl, she's just got the thickness from the poodle and then a little bit more of the drop coat from the Maltese. So it can be very difficult to get a smooth finish on her, which is why I like using her for training and in this case for a video. I've been grooming Lucy for about 8 years. She still doesn't like me very much. Fortunately, her parents do. But she's the prettiest little girl, and if you get her right, she always looks adorable. So we're going to start off with doing her sanitary trim. She's already been bathed and dried. You can't ever achieve a good finish on a coat unless you bath and dry the dog properly and prep the coat properly. So I always do a pre-rinse, shampoo, rinse, second shampoo, rinse, condition, rinse, towel dry, high velocity blow dry with my beloved double K, and then after that a fluff dry with an overhead dryer and a slicker brush, so we get the coat nice and separated so every individual hair is not only straight but it's all fanned out. I don't think I've ever found a knot on Lucy in 8 years. Her mother does an amazing job, but that would be the time with other dogs where you'd be either getting the knots out or deciding that you were going to go for a shorter trim to cope with the knots. So now she's ready for a sanitary trim. I'm using Bravura 5-in-1. So we start off with it on the middle setting, which is about a 15 blade. And I'm going to start off by doing the little hairs right in the corner of the eye, where you get the build up of the tears and you get those big gobs of eye goop sitting there. I'm going to use the 40 and we're just going to do this little bit in front of the nose, if she'll let me. Loose. Good girl. Again, they get a bit dribbly there. Going to do underside of the ear, which helps with airflow, helps keep the ears dry and prevent infection. That was on the 40. Back to the 15. Going to do her little armpits. Deep part under there. Now, I always do belly trim because nobody wants to be brushing out knots down there. It'd be very, very painful. And just top of the thighs. Spin it around. Hold her tail out of the way. Enough little dags under here. Do the bottom. Okay, that's all with 15 blade. Now I'm going to go back to the 40 and do a little feet. So I like to do back of the heel pad, between the pads, and just up the sides very lightly, because living in the country there's lots of puddles, and then we'll trim this hair later on. Sometimes you use the finger to get a head start on that trimming. You can get a nice flat edge on the back of the heel. There it is. Good. I always start with the back feet on every dog because they're a bit less twitchy about them than they are their fronts. So if you start with the front feet, they get all upset, then you're never going to get the backs done, whereas at least if you've got the backs done, you're halfway there. It's very important, particularly with all of the oodles, to check for mats in this groove here. They can get these really tight little mats buried deep in there, and I often see dogs where it's been clipped over the top and they haven't realised that there's actually a big knot in there that you need to dig out, because it can get prickles, even stones all caught into that knot. Barely imagine how painful that must be to walk on. Girl. Alright, so I'm using Buttercut 3F. I always use F blades. Everybody's got their own opinion, but I just find them safer and I like the finish. These are Andis clippers, which I like for the little dogs because they're nice and quiet. So, with this sort of coat, you need to be especially careful to always be clipping perfectly with the grain, because otherwise you are going to get lines. Just going to hold the tail underneath and skim off. So because she's getting a teddy bear trim, the 3 lengths, it's just going to be on the body, and we're going to skim off where this muscle dips. There's a rounded little thigh there, and then it dips in. So we're going to go 3 and then skim, and we'll do the rest with scissors, with the exception of the curve of the back of the leg here. So we want to take this bit short and then blend it around to give her some angulation in the leg, which will make her look fitter and more athletic. I sometimes lift the dog up and I go against the grain from the point of the joint just there and up there, and then blend that in, and we will blend that around the side into a fuller leg. So once again, skim off the thigh muscle, scoop up from the back of the hop there, side of her bum, there's the little tail. Likewise on the thigh muscle on the inside of the leg. Just going to do some scooping there, and then we'll scissor the bottom half of the leg. But if we make this bit a bit shorter, because otherwise they get a lot of friction in there and it's a good place for knots, if we take that a bit shorter than the rest of the leg, that helps everybody. Now, if you were grooming this dog for competition, you would bring the tuck up, which is this part of the body, forward to create a cobia, they call it, or a square looking shape. Again, because this is a country living dog, I don't do that with day-to-day Salon dogs. I keep the tuck up where it is, because otherwise all this extra hair you keep here to move the tuck up forward gets matted very quickly. So we're going to actually go into her natural flanking here and then just skim off, and we'll trim this bit later. Following the drop-ish coat down with the grain, you can already see how sensitive it is to the direction of the clippers. If I was to cut across at all here, I'd get some nasty lines. If she was more poodle-y in coat type, would hardly matter which way I went. But her coat is very unforgiving. Coming to the shoulder, again, we're just like we did back here, we're going to hug the body until we get to the elbow joint here, and there's a little dip above the elbow joint there, so we're going to skim off so we can create a nice straight teddy bear leg later. Tucking, meeting up with where we already pre-trimmed the armpit there. Steady. So it's important to look here, the coat's going this way, here it's going this way, and here it's on an angle. So you have to try to keep up with that. Good. Now we're going to stand her up and go against the grain right up her whole underside, because being low to the ground, lots of puddles about, helps if this bit is a little bit shorter. It makes her look longer on the leg, which is very appealing, but it also just makes it easier to deal with mud and burrs and grass seeds and all the stuff dogs run into in the country. At the same time, we just continue the cleaning off of the inner thigh muscle that we did from the back end a minute ago. Now at the front here, that's where the leg dips in. Now we want to show, that's their little forearm, we want to show the forearm angulation a little bit. So we're going to go in, but then scoop off. We don't go in and down the leg, we just go in, let the end of the blade touch that dip and scoop off. And we'll be able to blend that into a teddy bear leg with scissors. In, just touching and scoop off. And just lightly, I'm not quite touching here on this little corner, I'm just lightly blending it around to where we did the flat side here, so we get a nice little forearm angulation there. Slip off in it. Loose for a sec. Now I like to do teddy bear muzzles in the sort of Asian fusion style, but I like to have a very short chin. I don't like beards, because beards get wet and gross and muddy. Now she's not a big fan of the clipper under her chin, but if I can, I will actually go to the point of the throat and clip against the grain on dogs. She's not going to let me do it, probably. I'll do it with scissors to actually make the throat in there and the chin even shorter, because again it makes their neck look a little longer and a little more elegant, and it just deals with muddy beards or dirty beards from drinking, eating, finding horse manure, wombat droppings, all sorts of exciting stuff that Lucy could come across in her daily life out here. Now, I'm going to just the back of the ear bulb. So there's the ear, and there's a dent in there. So that's where we're going to, and I will blend the head into that later on. You can, a little bit if you're careful, do it with clippers, but you don't want to slip and make the back of the head too short. Now we're looking at just above where a collar would sit. Likewise round here, find the jawline, and I'm going under here. Now with a lot of teddy bear trims, groomers will often bring this all lower. They'll bring it to halfway down the neck and halfway around here. But that's where I tend to see a lot of matting with country dogs, the ears swinging around and going through wet grass. So I find people get better results if we bring it up. There's the corner of her jawbone just there. We bring it there. And then I sometimes can just skim off a little bit there, saves me a little bit of scissor work. And I'm not putting the clipper flat in, I'm just using the tip of it to get a bit of a gradient from long to short on the sides of the head. And I'll polish that up with scissors later. Now her coat's looking pretty nice and even today. If there were a lot of lines on it, I would back brush it. She's got a little wart in there, so got to be gentle. Again, perfectly against the grain. And then re-clip over that area. And you will find that'll help you a lot with removing any of the lines. As long as you make sure your brushing is beautifully against the grain and your clipping is then beautifully with the grain, and you get an even smoother finish than you had before. Likewise, it can help you with blending in your teddy bear legs. So we're going to be scissoring down here, but if your dog doesn't move and you've got a steady hand, you can skim some of that and save you a bit of scissoring time as well. So on this side, looking steady. Hey, hey, hey. You're a little bit uneven in spots. So if we just fluff it up in the direction of the grain very lightly, or against the direction of the grain, and then re-clip with the grain, you'll get a very even finish. Loose. Good, good. Okay. All right. Now, when it comes to doing teddy bear legs, I like to do usually the back legs first, because sometimes you had knots to deal with on the knee, or depends how much angulation you've brought in, and so they give you a good idea of what size leg you're going to end up with. I prefer to do the leg before I do the foot. I find if I do the foot first, I tend to make the foot a bit too small and then I make the whole leg too skinny. So we're going to fluff all this up so that it's ideally sticking out exactly perpendicular to the leg. Now you can do this with perfectly straight shears if you want. And just work your way down. And keeping the shears in direction with the grain, particularly on a coat like this, makes it easier to get a smooth finish. Now there are some incredible scissorers out there who could scissor this at any angle and still get a smooth finish. I'm not quite as clever at that unless I'm using chunkers. So I tend to stick with the grain, especially on a coat like this, which is not very forgiving. So we've got that dip here, that dip in the back of the leg there. So we're bringing that in and then around. So we're gradually getting longer and longer as we come around the corner. Now, if the dog's standing nice and square like she is, it makes it easy. We want this part from the hock to the foot to be nice and straight, vertical, perpendicular to the table. That's how a healthy dog should look. Just going to trim around the foot a little bit. We'll do the feet more carefully in a minute. Same around the inside. Now we're getting a little bit of column leg going on. Just what we want. Sometimes just giving the body a little gentle little bit of shake helps get the hair hanging in the right direction. Okay. Now with the foot, we want to make sure we bring up all the hair, nothing stuck in between the nails. Sweetie, sweetie. I like to think of trimming a teddy bear foot as a bit similar to trimming a poodle top knot. We're working vertically around the foot. Good girl. Trying to get that nice blunt teddy bear shape. Now, if your dogs walk around on pavements, you can make a nice big foot. Again, for country dogs, I tend to bring the foot in and expose the nails, so I keep quite a tight foot so that they don't get as muddy. So we get a nice beveled edge from where we clipped just up the side a little bit before, and then we bring that up and around. The hard part, and if I could find my comb, the hard part is the inside, I find, on a little dog, because it just never seemed to quite get in there just the way you want. Yeah, put it down. There you go. But we're looking pretty good. Be careful to keep the tail out of the way if it's the kind of dog who likes to tuck it in. But when you get to the tail, you'll find there's a lot less of it than you thought there was. There. Now that's not bad. It's not perfectly smooth. See, there's a few tosses setting out, so it just depends on your schedule and your scissoring ability, how long you want to spend making that really perfect. Again, if we're in a competition, we'd want it to be perfect. If she's going home to be a farm dog, you might give yourself a little bit extra leeway. When I'm in a rush, or I'm tired, I know my scissoring's not going to be as good, I like to use these because they're a lot more forgiving to achieve the same thing. They're a bit more work on the hand because obviously you have to do a lot more chops to cut the same amount of hair, but if you're not as steady with your scissoring, you'll still get a smooth finish because obviously any chop you make a mistake and they're not in a perfect line, it's not going to take out as much hair as if you were using straights. So we're going to do the same thing, just showing you that it can be a little quicker with chunkers. But it also depends on the coat whether you get desirable finish. These particular chunkers I can get a good finish on pretty much any coat. But I do find I've had a lot of chunkers over the years and they're all different. And some of them really only suit some hair types. These are Power and Work Blacksmith. And I must admit they're my saving grace for a lot of dogs' legs. When I'm in a rush, if the dog's not cooperative, or it's just that sort of hair that you just can't seem to get right. Shake. Also, the chunkers can be very handy working at awkward angles. Try and get the insides of the legs right. Now we want a nice straight line up and down. Now if I did this with straights, it would look like a set of shelves, but if I do it with chunkers, I can get it pretty smooth. Check if we're starting to get the same sort of thickness on both legs. Don't want one skinny leg and one fat one. Now I think the scissored leg looks a bit nicer, but I think the chunker leg was faster. So it depends on how your day's going and what you want to do. See if I can get this foot to look the same as the other one. Let's have a look. Not bad. You see what I mean? Her coat, if this was a poodle leg, you could have this perfect smooth column, whereas her coat, believe me, you can fiddle and fiddle at it for hours, and there'll always be little bits that just don't seem quite as smooth as you want them to be. But it's not bad. So now we want the front legs to look similar to this sort of thickness. So we go from the short here to the wide knee, and we know that that's sort of what we're going for, to have a balanced teddy bear. Okay, so once again we'll do one leg, if I can, with straight scissors and one with chunkers. See how they compare. With all the hair combed up and out, and a little shake to make it straight. I'm going to pick our line that we've got from the shoulder here and take that straight down to the floor, table rather. And likewise, we've got that dent here where we stopped with the clippers, so we want to match that. Now you can either look at this as a flat side and a flat side and a flat side and then round your corners, or scissor round a column as you go. There's no one right way of doing it, it's just what you're steadier with. my bugbear is elbows which stick out. Now, because I shave out the armpits, I'm more likely to get the elbows to stick out. If I didn't shave out the armpits quite so thoroughly, we'd have more hair back here to blend across here, which again is what you would do if you were in a grooming competition. But for a country dog, it's just not practical. You just end up with a big soggy knot. So we have to live with a little bit of elbow separation. And you have to remember that these sorts of things are things like the tuck up being back here instead of forward, and the elbow gap being exposed, are things that bug us as groomers, but the owners are really not going to notice unless they've been showing dogs all their lives, and if they've been doing that, they probably groom their own dogs too. Stop. Good girl. Now you've got to be careful when you start to pick up the front leg to work on it, that you keep the same angle. You often end up creating a bit of a triangle in one way or another. It takes practice. Just keep an eye on where the bone is, or if you've got one of those dogs with fascinating bent legs, and just imagine where the bone should be if it was correct. You want to keep coming straight down from where we scooped out here. Good girl. I know. Trying to hold her right at the toes so that I'm not limiting where I can scissor too much. I'm also trying to do it at a weird angle so I'm not blocking the camera at the same time. The length is getting right. We've got a very square looking leg at this point, which isn't ideal. So we just want to start rounding round. Again, it's a bit harder on a short dog, which is why I have shorter straights, because I've got to be able to fit them in between here and the table. Good girl. Always remember, when possible, to scissor in one motion, especially when you're doing legs. It's very tempting to look at it and say, oh, well, there's a bit sticking out there and there's a bit sticking out there. But then you just end up with more holes and more bits sticking out, and you end up with a very skinny leg by the end of it. So if you keep fluffing it all out and then start on your nice line where the bone is, and then work around and think straight line up to the elbow. Make sure you know where this bit of skin is and don't go too far, and come back round, and here straight line, tuck into that armpit, come back round. Good. Let's see. There, we're getting better now. If we do the foot, hopefully it will all start coming together. As you can see, I haven't trimmed her nails yet. I usually do that at the end of a groom because I have a lot of dogs who are stroppy about it, and I don't want to put them in a bad mood while I still have all the other work ahead of me. I prefer to have that particular battle right at the end. Good girl. Put your leg down. Fix where I was holding it. No, it's not bad. A little bit tufty there. We'll try doing the same thing with chunkers. See if it's faster and if it still looks as good. Now my chunkers are 7.5 inch, so they are bigger than those scissors. But they're also a little bit more flexible on angles you can use. Again, pick our point on the shoulder. We're going to go straight down to the table. You do have to comb a bit more with chunkers because often because they're not slicing all the hairs, they might just squish a bunch of them down. Then here's our little notch we clipped up to there. Go straight down from that. Careful not to hit the top of her toes. Go straight down from, if we'd kept this coat, if we were trying to be perfect, we'd keep that and go straight down, but as it is, we're going to know the elbow's in here, so we want to be about here. You can look back at this leg, say, all right, well, we want this sort of thickness. Rounding around that corner is a bit easier with the chunkers. It's alright. Good. Very careful. She's folding. I'm pushing on her elbow to keep that foot out because if she folds it back, I'm going to hit the back of that pad with the tip of my scissors. No, you're getting sick of me now. I'll fold this up again, see where we're at. Good girl. Got a nice corner there. Well, rather not a corner, we've got a nice curved cylinder happening there on the outside. Alright, now again, because these scissors are longer, I'm going to need to pick up this foot. Try not to bring too much, squash too much hair. Get our bone line and turn for me, sweetie. Good girl. Curve up under there, not too far. That's the benefit of shaving the armpits first. You're not tempted to go into the danger zone because there's no hair there. Got quite a nice rounded cylinder happening there. Do that foot, see if we can tie it all together. Tufts come out of nowhere there. Okay, we're working on beveling up on the short side. The hair gradually gets longer and longer to meet the lovely leg we've just done. This can be trickier when you've got dogs whose feet turn out. She's turning her foot out at the moment, which made me think of it, but in fact she's pretty straight in front for a Maltese cross. You have to be a bit imaginative if the toes are pointing over here to try and get that straight leg. It is a lot easier with a well-built dog because you're a pretty girl. Yes. I know. This is not your idea of fun. You're being very good. Alright, so we have 2 front legs. One done by scissors, one done by chunkers. And they're pretty similar. Again, I'd say the scissor one's probably a little bit neater, perhaps. But the chunker one's nothing to be ashamed of. And of course you can always tidy up your scissors with chunkers afterwards. Put on the knee sticking out. It's a good little teddy bear. Alright, just quickly do her tail. So she has a very simple pony style tail. When I do a pony style tail, so you're letting all the hair grow down to one length at the bottom, again, for country dogs, I make sure that it's not going to drag on the ground if she's having a sad day, because it's going to pick up every bit of mud and leaves and every burrs and everything else it can find. So don't bring it out here and then trim it straight, because then when it falls it'll be tapered. Make sure comb it to the ground, grab it there, and then bring it out as best you can so that the bottom ends up flat with the table. There we go. This little tuft sticking out here and there. All right. Sweetie. Good girl. You can sit down now if you want. Good girl. Good girl. I know. All right, let's have a look at this pretty little face. I just thought she looks like a little bunny. First of all, keep her ears out of the way. And I'm going to comb all her hair forwards. I'm allergic to having dogs come back for the next groom and their mother has mowed their hair back to get it out of their eyes. Lucy's owner would never do that, but many do. So I make sure that nothing's going to get in their eyes for quite some time. Now for the head, I unashamedly do use, I suppose they're blenders rather than chunkers. They're in between a thinner and a chunker. These are also Power & Work Speedmaster. I think Nick Kontos from Power & Work was actually the first scissor maker to bring out curved chunkers and blenders, but I apologise if I have that wrong. But I just love these for my heads. I used to do heads with curved scissors and then go over them with a little thinner or blender afterwards to soften it up, whereas this just does everything in one go and I love it to bits. So we're going to start off finding her eyes. I prefer a sort of eyebrow approach rather than a visor. I like to take this little bit in the middle back a bit. It's just personal preference. I don't like the sort of veranda look. There aren't any rules about these things unless you're doing proper breed trim. So, and then I'm starting to blend this round the top of the head, so we're ending up with all this hair from the middle here gradually getting shorter, so we don't end up with a pudding basin cut. Just bringing it, matching the eye and then coming round. While at the same time trying not to come in too hard, and then you end up with a sort of pointed head, which is Easy to do on these dogs where the hair sort of splits into a parting and falls down. If you've got a big bouffant oodly shape, then it's easy, but when they're floppy like this, you can make it too short very quickly, so you've got to be careful. And I make sure I take all the ear hair back, but I like to cut this stuff in front of the ear. I don't like to bring the ear hair round because, again, so many dogs get ear infections and stinky ears, so I like all this to be as short as the cheek hair. So then we're going to come round and round and then in front of the ear. Same thing, so round from the eye and round. And I'm doing a bit of an in and out motion with her because her hair is so flat to the head. Even when I fluff it up, you know, it wants to go flat. So I'm sort of grabbing it and pulling it out a little as I go. Trying not to actually yank on the hair. She'll let me know if I do, like I did then. But just to help me not miss so many hairs. And I'm going to bring the ears back down. And try and separate the long ears from the top knot and try and create a soft blend. I don't like having a really sharp cut across there, but there's no denying we go from short head hair to long ear hair. I find if I go shorter, longer, and make it all one thing, I just end up with knots in the ears. So again, if you have dogs in the city or dogs that are coming more often than every couple of months, you might not get those issues. But out here, I have to have dogs be able to cope with living in the countryside and dealing with long grass and rain and puddles and dams and having a best friend that's a border collie that likes to run after cattle or all the sorts of things which happen. Now I'm blending the back of the head, so from ear bulb to ear bulb. Again, we decide, all right, this is where we're going to have long ear hair, this is where we're going to have shorter back of head hair, and so we blend that across, good girl, and into the even shorter neck hair. I have Lucy's hair stuck to my face, making the itch. A little bit here. I like doing this with chunkers or blenders because, again, I don't like hard separations. Although there is technically a hard separation between where I'm deciding that's going to be ear and that's going to be head. I don't want you to be able to see it unless you actually dive in and start to part the hairs. Okay. So we're just going to clean up these bits here. And I find you have to keep coming back to these corner hairs because no matter how much I trim them and comb them and trim them, then the dog does something and then they've got hair blocking their eyes again. So we want to get a little bit of a gradient. I don't want to give them a goggles look, but owners love to see their dog's pretty eyes, so we want to make sure they can and can for a good few weeks. Now, with a drop-ish coat like this, I'm going to part her hair along the nose. Bring the ears back again. Right. So we've done this part, we haven't done this part. It's all about slowly making, it's not exactly a circle, but it's a pleasantly curved teddy shape. So we want to get rid of this long, sort of sad, droopy look here. So we're going to come up and pretty much match this curve. Sorry, sweetie, I pressed on her throat a little bit there. Around there. Good girl. Good girl. Up, up. There we go. Good girl. Good girl. All right. Now here's where I'm going to shorten up that chin. She didn't like me clipping before. So, curve of these is perfect. So we start, I'm going to go really short along the middle of the chin and down to her throat here, and then blend it out. Got to be very careful with dogs who like to pant like Luce, because you do not want to put a chunker through that tongue. So go and blending around there. We're keeping this curvy look going on. Now, sweetie, I need you to... So hard, because if you try and hold the mouth shut, well then instantly you're squashing the hairs you're trying to shape. So it's a bit of a juggle. Good girl. Can you shut it for me again? Good girl. I'm only applying sort of the minimum pressure as a suggestion. Can't really forcibly hold the mouth shut, but they're just going to resist. And no, I wouldn't like somebody to be holding my mouth shut. Okay, can you just reset? Good girl. Thank you. Now we're bringing to that curve around and up the sides. We're going for a smiley face look. The idea of an Asian fusion muzzle, and I know some would say this isn't a true Asian fusion muzzle because I've taken the beard off and they like them to be a big round donut. But in any case, even when they do that, the widest point should be above the opening of the mouth, because it makes the dog look happier. If it's down here, you get this droopy, sad look, whereas if you can trim it so the widest point is above the lips, they'll just look more cheerful. She's not panting because she's hot. She's panting because she's a bit tense. She doesn't really enjoy all this. But she's being a very good girl. So now you've got a bit of this point going on. You want to soften that. I find sometimes a nice way to do that is to bring the hair forward. Hey, I know. You don't like it, I know. Because we don't really want stuff coming forward past the nose because it all gets wet and gross. I really want to try and get that hair in there. Okay, so we come and we take anything off level with the front of the nose, and then we go round and up and round. It's all about just gently beveling, and often it can be nice. With Luce, I don't do it so much as I would with a really curly coat, is you create a bit of a dent here, sort of level with the corner of the eye. It can be really good for dogs with tear stains, it can be very handy. But it also pops that nose mustache out. It looks a bit perkier. A little bit more cartoony, I guess, really, but it's cute. So again, we want to those little wet hairs of those and around and a little indent. Let's have a look. And if you're brave enough, try and go along the lips and get those hairs that stick in their mouth when they're panting. Okay, let's have a look. Ideally at this point, if the dog has a good shake, then you really get to see what the head's doing. You shake for me? Good girl, there we go. Now look at me. There we go. The odd tuft sticking out. That's not half bad. And you've got to accept that there are some dogs with a coat like Lucy where you are going to have this slightly more rustic look than you would on a really curly coat where you can make everything absolutely perfectly smooth. But there's nothing wrong with being a bit rustic. Okay. Now the last thing we need to do is trim her ears. Her dad likes super long ears and Mum would like more bobbed ears, so we sort of compromise. Now, because her ears are quite thin, you can easily do them with straight scissors. If they were thicker, bushier, more oodly ears, I'd go along them afterwards like this, as in, and bevel them both on the underside and on the top, and bevel the corners because it just gives an even fuller, more rounded look. Also, the thin ears can be tricky because when I straighten them, I flatten the ear leather out on my hand. That's smooth, but when she holds them, she folds the ear, and then you have tufts. But if I take those tufts off when the ear's straight, there'll be a gap. So again, your blenders can be good just to try and get a bit of a compromise between the two, so that the owners who see the folded ear don't think, oh, there's a bit sticking out, and the groomer who looks at the flattened ear doesn't think, oh, there's a hole in the ear. Let's have a look. Do they look the same? Pretty good. Right, we'll do her nails, and she's all done. Again, with nails, I like to do the back feet first, because there's always less arguments about the back, and then you know you're halfway done. Good girl. Find a little dewy. Good girl. Good girl. He's a good girl. We're all finished. He's a pretty girl. Yes.